My name is Alastair Miller, and as a photographer, I'm normally behind the camera. But in this series, with Viking, I'm exploring the Maltese archipelago, Sicily, and Naples. In today's episode, join me as I visit the ancient city of Mdina, where, with local guide Novka and Mdina's mayor Peter Sant Manduka, I learn about its culture, atmosphere, and history. Proudly sitting high up on a hilltop, the walled city of Mdina watches over the island of Malta. This one-time ancient capital is today known as the Silent City, a delight of narrow streets, hidden doorways, and wandering cats.
These are very interesting narrow streets that you can walk around in Mdina. Narrow streets are quite good. They are not just a Maltese origin, but very traditional Mediterranean. In the hot days, and we do have really hot days. Last year, the hottest day was in August, 42 degrees.
I was here in August.
You were there,
and
okay.
It was hot.
Yeah.
Boy, it was
They
hot.
offer shade, and the first car to Malta came in 1907. So before that, they did not need large roads. And most of the towns in Malta, when you go around the church, there would be the narrowest part with the narrow street. And
Right.
something that you find practically everywhere in the towns. This part of Mdina is older, and these are traditional windows. Some of the characteristic of the Maltese houses, they are called pregnant windows.
They're called pregnant
Pregnant
windows.
windows, yes, for the flowers and outside. So you see them practically everywhere, pregnant windows. And
Is there a practical reason
shape,
why they're shaped
for
like
the shape
that?
and for the flowers to have
have more space, yeah.
Exactly, yes.
Pregnant windows.
Pregnant windows. This would be an example of a traditional medieval house.
Yeah.
On the corner here, with the high windows, because Malta suffered so much from attacks from pirates, from Ottomans, and in order to save and preserve better the safety of the family, they would put high windows and very small for the enemies not to be able to enter that easy through the windows and attack. So this would be very good example of a traditional medieval house.
Yeah, I can see with these windows up here. Yeah.
Yeah, quite small.
You're right, they are very high.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be practically a first type of balcony, closed stone balcony. But something very interesting that you have here on this square is the mushrabiyya window. It's a traditional Arabic window with the hole. You see the hole underneath. That would be, that hole would be for the family to check out who's outside the house, who's knocking the door, to spy and not to be seen. So that was, even this one is slightly different because it has a glass window. Usually it would be made all out of wood. So they wouldn't see a person watching and spying from up there who's knocking the door.
Okay.
And some think that the Maltese traditional balconies, as this one next to it, originated from this smaller one. So they made a bigger one in the 18th century in order for one to step outside.
Excellent. Okay.
But still, they are very often used to see at what time the neighbors came back from the parties and to check what is smelling from their kitchen, and apart from hanging up the clothes on them.
There's a lot of checking going on in Malta, isn't there? Yeah.
Especially in Valletta, because in Valletta most of the balconies are all traditional Galleria wooden balconies.
Right.
Okay. So this is mushrabiyya Arabic window. Very few to see in Malta. This is good.
No, that's great. That's interesting. I wouldn't have noticed that if you hadn't pointed it out.
Yeah.
I notice there's a lot of these outside the houses.
Yeah.
Little, the Mary and the child,
saints,
and Jesus.
Mary with the baby.
The little light is sweet as light.
Yeah. also very often the names. Houses would have the names
Right.
after the saints, after the patron saint of the town. Maybe sometimes just the surname of the family, or maybe even the name of a person who have built the house. So that is also something very characteristic of the houses in Malta. Names, saints, yeah. Pregnant windows, that's all you get to see from outside.
Where are we now?
So we are now at the Bastion Square of Mdina, and from up here you can enjoy an amazing view of the islands.
Yeah.
Practically 3/4 of Malta you can see, and you can observe also Valletta from up here, our capital, south and north, quite visible both from the view.
Wow.
This is definitely, apart from the view of the Grand Harbour in Valletta, one of the most impressive views that we have on the islands.
That's amazing.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
And when you come up here, you realize why all the nationalities wanted to conquer this side of the islands. We are practically in the central area. From up here, the view, it's quite visible. The enemies would always attack from this side. So for them was important to observe and always see this. Because on the other side you have cliffs, which are about 250 meters high. The highest point of Malta is actually on that side. So these are flat cliffs from where the enemies never could attack the islands.
So if the enemy's coming, they come from this side?
Yeah, they would come from here.
So you'd
from
see
this
them
side.
from quite a long way away?
Yeah, you would. You
You
would
could get
see
your
them.
guns ready?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So therefore, this was the strategically very important city before the knights came to Malta, before 1530.
But it was the capital.
It was the capital, yes. It was the capital until the knights came.
And so, to tell me more about his city, who better to go and see than the mayor of Mdina, Peter Sant Manduka.
Hi, Alastair.
Peter.
How are you?
Thank you. I'm
Okay,
fine.
how are
Yeah,
things?
may I
All
come
right?
in?
Of course, by all means.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thanks a lot.
Wow, this is beautiful.
Thanks.
This is
our
your
family.
father's home?
Yes.
Yeah.
Family home, my father's home. My father was brought up here, my grandfather. Before that, my great-grandfather.
Right.
Myself and my brother used to live here.
All these
too.
wonderful
You know?
paintings.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're very old. They've been in the
These have
family.
been collected by your family over
Yes.
the generations.
That's right, yes. Been in the family for centuries.
And the Maltese clock.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a demand for them nowadays.
Beautiful.
Yes, they're beautiful.
We wandered around the town this morning,
Yes.
and we got here as early as we could,
Yes.
which I think is the best time to
The
be.
best time,
Yeah.
yes. It's pretty busy right now.
Gosh, look at these guns. Oh,
Yes, that's right. This is our little so-called armory.
yes.
Very old.
And is this your?
That's a
coat of
family,
arms?
yes, crest. Yes, that is Sant and that is Manduka.
Ah, right.
My
Okay,
surname is
San Manduka.
double
Was it
barrel
two
surname.
families?
Two families, yes. But they've been, they joined two centuries ago, even later than that.
How wonderful to be able to trace back. How many
Yes,
generations?
family trees. We've been in this house for about 8 generations now.
8 generations.
8 generations, yes. So quite a while. We've been here quite a while.
You can be proud of that. Yeah, that's
It's,
fantastic. That's amazing.
It really feels like home.
Yeah, right, yes. We wandered around Mdina this morning,
Yes.
and it is an extraordinarily beautiful
A beautiful place.
town. It's a town. It's not a city. Is
It's a
it?
city.
You would call it a city.
It's the old capital city of Malta. It's before
It's the
Valletta
old
was
capital.
built. Mdina was the capital city, you know.
And then the knights arrived,
And
and
the knights arrived, and after the Great Siege in 1565, they decided to build a new capital city, which is Valletta today. That happened after the Great Siege. The knights came to Malta in 1530, and they came to Mdina first. Grandmaster, the first Grandmaster, Philip Villiers de Ladam, he came to Mdina. He spent about a few nights here, and then he settled in Rabat, in the monastery there, and he stayed there. But then after the Great Siege, they built Valletta. Malta. Mdina became then a romantic city.
I wonder how the people of Mdina felt about not being the capital.
Well,
I mean, it's a kind of loss of prestige.
exactly, they did. Mdina did lose the prestige when the night came, when settled in the three cities. Yeah. But even more when Valletta was built. When Valletta was built, it was the new city, the popular town, and that was the time I think that Mdina lost even more of its importance in a way, you can say. Yeah. Valletta was then important.
What's it like to live in a city like this?
It's the best place in the world for me, of course. All my friends were here, which today is very difficult to find. There are no kids around anymore. But when I was young, there were, a lot of families and a lot of children, and you could play a game of football on any street you like those days. There's so many kids. Today, we have one teenager, who happens to be my nephew. Maybe if there's another child, a baby, that's about it. It's very sad.
And when you were growing up here,
Yes.
were cars allowed in the city? Because
Yes,
now
cars allowed, yes.
there's delivery cars in the morning, but
Residents are allowed in.
right.
Till today. You've got special permits which we allow people to come in, deliveries, as you said yourself, but before, no, there were no restrictions. But there weren't so many cars around anyway in Malta, so,
Right. Yeah.
things were slightly different. There were cars, but not as much.
Because I've read that Mdina is often called the silent city. Is that because of it's not that silent.
No, it's a bit of a fantasy saying really, because Mdina went silent after the Second World War, because there were a lot of refugees who came from the harbour areas and settled in Mdina for safety reasons. And then after the war, they went back home. So Mdina suddenly emptied, and they used to call it the silent city. So that's where it gets its nickname from.
And Mdina today, how is it? Because we came early because
busy.
we knew there would be a lot of visitors, and you do get a lot of visitors.
A lot of very, very busy.
And I'd be interested to know, Peter, as mayor,
Yes.
how what your thoughts are on balancing the needs of tourism, mass tourism,
It's a very
and
difficult.
the needs of the people who live
yes,
here.
It's a very difficult balancing act, in fact, because obviously you've got the business community and you've got the residents, and they both have to live together. Mm-hmm. Obviously, tourists, although they're needed, they could be invasive, so that is an issue, especially for residents. Our policy is obviously to encourage the residents to open the businesses in Mdina. That is a win-win situation when that happens. Mm-hmm. You see, because obviously you live here and you're earning your keep here too. But we do get a lot of tourists. I mean, we get roughly over this was before the COVID, of course, I'm talking about, before COVID-19, where we're hitting over 2 million per year.
2 million a year?
Yes, which is quite high for...
Because it's quite
it's a small
okay, tell me,
place.
how many residents are there?
There's 100 households and there's about 230 residents.
So 230 residents, 2 million visitors.
The economy is very good here, and we get about 500 people working in the city daily, which is a good economy.
It's fantastic.
And part of that economy is delicate, colourful glassware, handmade on the premises.
But is the residential population going up or down?
Down. We have an aging population. The problem is that properties are very expensive here to buy, and if you can afford one, they don't have the necessities and luxuries people look for today. Very difficult to find a garden, difficult to find a garage, difficult to have a pool. So people rather prefer when they can afford that sort of money, they rather prefer buying a villa than a house in Mdina.
Yeah.
Which means the houses are basically left at the mercy of commercialization.
So if I wanted to come and buy a house in Mdina, what would I have be expected to pay? Do you think? Just not a beautiful house like this one, but just a regular.
A 2-bedroom townhouse with maybe a very small yard, you're looking at €1 million.
Really?
€1 million.
Wow, it is expensive.
Without a view.
Yeah, without a view.
Probably in an alley or on a narrow street.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But okay, the architecture will be there. You've got history, but it depends how much you're willing to pay for it.
I mean, how do you feel about Mdina in 20, 30 years?
Very different. Very different.
Really?
I think so. I think there'll be more boutique hotels and more restaurants and that sort of thing.
Well, that could be good.
Yes, if they're done properly.
If it's done correctly.
And they actually salvage the property, which in the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Apart that, obviously, you've got residents, which is another issue, like we mentioned before. But if the places are restored properly, it isn't that bad.
Novka, these are some beautiful door knockers here.
Yes, actually most of the noble palaces here in Mdina had the door knockers made out of bronze, and very often they would have angels as decorations, sometimes faces with open mouth to scare the evil spirits, and in certain occasions even the coat of arms of the families, since most of the families were noble families and they used to have their own coat of arms as well. They were made out of bronze, and it was very important to keep them clean and polish them properly daily. The maids that used to work for the houses, for the families, especially if they had a free weekend on a Friday before leaving the house to go for a free weekend, they had to polish them properly and make sure that they are clean, because how clean were your door knockers, it resembled how clean your house is from inside.
So how clean is this house?
Well, this being not used at the moment, definitely not showing this.
Actually, I rather like the way they, they oxidize and the green.
Yeah,
It's beautiful. It's almost more beautiful like this and clean, and you can see how it's.
They used to pull them there and
Yeah.
knock the door knockers. Yeah.
And I guess if that doesn't work, you just
Yeah.
pull on the bell.
Pull the bell.
Great.
Definitely.
Lovely. Let's carry on. Give me an idea of what is the best things about living here.
Well, I call it my extended front garden, my drive-in, because obviously Mdina for me is it's all good, There's so much to see. First and foremost, the residents and the people who live here, they're very, very nice, they're fantastic. Second of all, it's a walled city. You've got the narrow streets, there's a lot of history. If you like history, this is the place to be,
So Novka, we're walking along the city walls here, the ramparts.
Yes, the fortifications, as you see them today, were modified after the earthquake that happened in 1693. Actually, this earthquake happened on the 11th January. It was for about 4 minutes, 7.2 strong, and it destroyed good part of the town of Mdina. And fortifications had to be restored and rebuilt after this earthquake. But even before the earthquake, Mdina had fortifications that were made by the Arabs, and preferably also some kind of fortifications before Arabs by the Byzantines. So Mdina was always a walled city with a drawbridge at the main entrance in order to close it, and the population would be hidden inside. It was like a shelter also for the people. Fortifications were very important.
Tell me about the pirates.
The pirates, yes, Malta was attacked by the pirates. Very often would be from North Africa or from the Sicily, the corsairs from Sicily. So these, for example, fortifications also very important in such occasions. And what you see from up here is 3/4 of an island, and exactly the area from where they would attack, because on the other side we have cliffs which are 250 meters high, flat cliffs, and from that side enemy could never attack and could never climb. So for them was always important throughout the history of Malta and throughout the history of the town to see this side of the island and this view in order to prepare.
I'm imagining pirates coming from this direction.
Yes, yes. Yes, they would. And
what kind
there
of
is a
defences
story. There is a story about the Maltese churches related to the pirates, which is quite weird when you say pirates and the church. But very often tourists tend to ask why Maltese churches are so rich in interior. All those paintings and gold and everything that you find within the interior. It's because they say that churches are rich because in a case of attack, when they used to attack, the priest would come out and offer everything from the church in order to save the village people. They would invest in the church as also as a safe point, as to, you know, keep the people in a safe
So they'd give all the beautiful ornaments of the church to the pirates and then say, okay, now you go in, go
you save the
go and
people,
attack
because very
somewhere
often
else.
they would take people for slavery, kill people, steal whatever they would find, and that's the reason they say the Maltese churches are quite rich from interior.
But with walls like this, it would be difficult to attack this
Yeah,
city, wouldn't it?
this side,
it's a
It
fantastic defence.
would be practically impossible.
Yeah.
Fantastic defense, yes.
Yeah, but it didn't stop them trying.
Yes, and since Knights of St. John had a bad experience in Rhodes before coming to Malta, and they lost Rhodes against the Ottoman Empire, coming here, starting a new life, they thought that stronger fortifications would be a must around their towns, including Mdina and Valletta later on. Yeah. And the three cities also. So we still have these oldest fortified cities by the Knights of St. John existing in Malta.
Oscar, tell me about this. What's going on here?
Yeah, basically over here we have the church dedicated to Our Lady of Carmelites together with the statue. When the last plague hit Malta in 1814, which came from Constantinople, people closed the doors of Mdina and they stayed in order not to spread disease. And they made a promise that those who will survive after the plague would set up the statue of Our Lady of Carmelites to thank her for saving them.
Sort of an early COVID situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Something we can say as COVID nowadays.
But some people did survive the plague.
Yes, they did. They did survive, and those who did, together with the priest, they made the promise. That
They kept
made.
the promise?
They kept the promise and they set up the statue. This is a Maltese Baroque style cathedral, since the architect was Maltese. Up there you have two clocks, one is for time, one is for date. And it is considered to be one of his masterpieces, the finest work of the Maltese architect Lorenzo Gaffa.
It's a beautiful square.
Yes, the beautiful
And
square.
a real mix of architecture.
Yes. You have, for
And what is this
example,
one?
the last neo-Gothic building built here in Mdina. Then next to it you have neo-classical building with the cathedral being Baroque. And there is on the corner Palazzo Santa Sofia, which is the oldest building in the medieval style. And the upper part floor was added later, 1090, when the Normans were here. So you have the Norman style, medieval style, neoclassical, neo-Gothic, Baroque. And with all these architectural styles, you also get the British Card-Phone box, which
It's like
was...
it's like a little metaphor for Malta, really, isn't it? All
Yes,
these influences
yes.
just piling in.
Exactly. And we can say that the cathedral is the most dominant building inside of Mdina, the most important as well, being the Cathedral of Malta. All the girls have this dream to get married here. They say the Maltese girls, it's their dream, with the red carpet and with this unique atmosphere that you get in Mdina.
If you come to Malta, you should really try to visit this charming city and, as it did for me, fall under the spell of its quiet charms and hidden secrets. Next time, I'll be in Valletta with Novka, where we'll be discussing the city's past and present, before I join the Viking family for the private naming ceremony of the Viking Mars.